everybody, I am Tommy, and you are on the lifeboat, at least in theory. Hope everyone is having a good night. Boy, this one here is destined to be demonetized. Although that is sort of the prevailing wind around here is that our videos are going to be demonetized because we're not holding back anymore, and we're saying things even if they're on that list of words you're not supposed to say, like COVID or shamdemic, any of those kind of things. This tonight, what we're going to be talking about is something that always gets people kind of torqued. When you start talking about the JFK assassination, there are as many different theories of what happened back in 1963 in November as there are people out there that talk about it. But I think that the prevailing theory is that the story that the Warren Commission gave us doesn't really add up. And recently, there have been a treasure trove of documents that have been released. And most of the stuff is not groundbreaking. There's not a whole lot of really new stuff in there, but it's making people discuss the possibility that JFK was killed by the Israelis' version of the Central Intelligence Agency. Boy, there's 3 words you don't want to say on a YouTube video if you don't want to be demonetized. The CIA, right? The CIA version, the Israeli version of the CIA is called the Mossad. To the best of my knowledge, there's only been one book ever written by an ex-Mossad agent. I read it when I was in prison, and right now, unfortunately, the name of the book is escaping me. But he talked about training and going through all of the stuff that he did when he joined the Mossad. Book starts out with the guy driving a 308 Ferrari and setting a guy up that he's going to turn to make a double agent. But it's a fascinating study. And above the door to enter their building, like our Quantico or whatever, our Langley, where they go for the Mossad. And above the door in Hebrew, it says, by any means necessary, right? Doesn't matter what it takes. We're going to get it done. And if you think of the history of the Jews, you can understand why they would take the stance that, we're not getting in rail cars anymore. And I'm not saying that disrespectfully. This is something that they say often, never again, right? They got in willingly because they thought that humanity was going to be somewhere on that train line. Now, here's the deal. It's a very difficult thing to talk about this stuff without being called anti-Semitic. Candace Owens has done some incredible work on this and has been deemed one of the biggest anti-Semites on the planet now. I watch a lot of Ben Shapiro. I used to watch a lot of Ben Shapiro or listen to a lot of Ben Shapiro. When I was in prison, Ben Shapiro was one of those late night guys that was fun to listen to because unlike almost everybody else on earth, the guy talks as fast as I like to listen to somebody. On YouTube, I play everything at double speed if I'm watching something, and he's a guy that just talks really fast, and he usually gets his point across. And I saw somebody talking to him about the dump of info recently, and if this might paint a picture where the Mossad may have been one of the organizations that was responsible for the killing of John F. Kennedy. His response scared the crap out of me. It really did. I give this guy a lot of credit for being a thinker because he usually demonstrates that. But his response was, that was 1963. I'm paraphrasing, but pretty much this is the message to be sure. He said, that was 1963. It's 2025. Honestly, I'm more concerned about 2025. And it's kind of like, who killed, Harris or any, he starts going back and talking about long periods of time and why we shouldn't much give a crap about what happened in 1963. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm not trying to, but if you had said that, if we had said, instead of that being the subject, if we said, how about hunting down somebody from the Holocaust, somebody that was working at one of the death camps, you wouldn't go, well, that was 1946. That was a really long time ago, right? If it was Joseph Mengele and he was on the run, I don't think that he would have the same sort of cavalier attitude to it. the fact that people want to just literally say, who cares? This happened a long time ago. Candace Owens makes a pretty good argument, and I think a lot of other people are starting to see a lot of strings attached to different things that are making you really question whether or not this is our greatest ally. And for the love of God, the amount of money that we have given this country. The Israelis buy a ton of military stuff from us, a ton, right? They're probably our number one customer, really cool military stuff. But we give them the money to go shopping with. Honestly, you can research this. We grant them unbelievable amounts of money that they then buy. I'm not sure how that works. Honestly, it's like borrowing cash from a dope dealer to buy dope from them. It's not on the front, right? Just don't just give me the dope. No, let's work some kind of huge hustle, because this way the government, whoever was in office at the time, could channel cash to these private companies. And isn't that always a good thing, right? But one of the reasons I think Ben Shapiro doesn't want to talk about this is because at the time that this stuff was, the time when Kennedy was assassinated, he was doing some things that were really not in the best interest of the new country, Israel. One of the things was he was trying to force AIPAC to register as a foreign agent. Hold on one second, folks. I just got a text. Let me make sure that this is not. Sorry. What was I saying? AIPAC. They were trying to get AIPAC to have to register as a foreign agent. AIPAC is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. It's they're lobbyists, right? But they're powerful ass lobbyists. And that was one of the things that he was doing. He also didn't want Israel to develop a nuke. He was dead set against there being nukes in that part of the world, and he didn't want Israel or anyone else to have them. And he was pretty serious about that. That was not something they were pretty happy about. But the big one was he demanded Israel accept the 800,000+ Palestinians who had been displaced from their homes in 1947 when they gave that property to the Jewish people. And they wanted no part of that. Now, that does not prove that the Mossad killed JFK, but it gives him a crap load of motive. And on top of that, there was a speech made that a lot of people have talked about over the years where Kennedy made reference to, if you knew everything I knew, kind of a thing. He was kind of freaked out. And he also talked about perhaps America rolling out its own money. Now, I want to tell you something. You want to talk about a dangerous thing to do? Start talking about doing away with renting your money from the Federal Reserve and see what happens. I'm going to be telling a story coming up this week. And I've alluded to the thing a couple of times in the past. But it's a story of a guy that I met in prison. I was going through Oklahoma City Transfer Center. The Oklahoma City Transfer Center is literally an airport with a prison attached to it. If you've ever been on an airplane, I'm sure most of you have, when you get off the airplane, you walk down the gangway, right? That device that comes out and meets the plane. It seals up against the side of the plane, and you walk through the little gangway, and you're in the airport. At Oklahoma City, you do that and you're in prison. And there's a bunch of guys waiting right there to put handcuffs on or take them off and get you wherever you're going. And you're going to go to a cell. And it's a transfer center. You're waiting for another plane or you're waiting for a bus. And if you're moving anywhere on the left coast, you're going to be going through Oklahoma City. Shapiro talks way too fast, says Bulldog LLC. He does talk fast. James Sharp says, AIPAC owns everyone. Biden, Obama, Trump, etc. I'll tell you something. I just would love to believe that's not the truth. But I've said from Jump Street that I'm gonna ride this thing, and if the things point in directions that are a bummer, well, they point in directions that are a bummer. And I'll tell you something. You guys know who Brett Ratner is? Brett Ratner is a Hollywood movie guy. And there's some pretty foul stuff that the guy's been accused of. Now, by way of full disclosure, the guy was not convicted of anything. However, it really kind of looks like he hauled ass the first chance he got to Israel. They gave him a place to hide because there was a lot of crap going on in the U.S. that he was probably going to get charged with. Allegedly. You can look this stuff up. And please do. Brett Ratner. That's a fairly fascinating read. But what I'm bummed out about is this. He's kind of getting a new breath of life. Looks like he's coming back to the United States to film something again. And what he's going to be filming is a movie about, I believe, Melania Trump. And if it's not about Melania, then it's about the Trumps. But Melania is going to be the co-director. And if I'm wrong on that, maybe she's getting a producer credit or something like that. But she's working, allegedly, directly with Brett Ratner on this project. And you know what, folks? That just doesn't smell very good. It really doesn't. Again, people get accused of things that they didn't do all of the time. That's a reality in the world that we live in. We're watching it. It's coming back on us, right? I caught so much crap today, folks. I caught so much crap today. An email that somebody sent me, an old watcher of the boat who was very disappointed that I could come out here and defend Harvey Weinstein and suggest that maybe in some way Harvey wasn't guilty of the crimes that he was put in prison for. Just for the record, I'm not defending Harvey Weinstein. But when we live in a country where just because you're a scumbag, right, you deserve to be put in prison. And it doesn't matter if you're guilty of the crimes that they're accusing you of, just as long as we know you're a really bad person. And the problem with that becomes who gets to decide who the really bad people are and how long before the really bad people sort of run out. And then they start looking at people that are almost bad people. You follow me? There are slippery slopes in life. I'll give you an example. I was sitting in a library in the feds, and there were a bunch of guys talking with a cop who was a cop that worked in education. So I guess as much of a teacher as anything else. And they were talking about some guys at Butner. Butner's in one of the Carolinas. It's where Bernie Madoff died. It's a lot of high profile people go there, and it is very much reserved usually for people who are in protective custody or people that have really foul sex cases, like really messed up, huge amounts of child porn kind of cases. And apparently they got a few guys in there. This was back in probably been about 2019, 2020, somewhere in there. But the cop was saying there's a couple of guys that they've got over there whose sentences were up 5 years ago in one case, 7 years ago in another. The dude did his time, right? And his sentence was up 7 years ago. They were supposed to kick him out. Now, I don't know the dispensation of all of this stuff because I didn't, it wasn't like I had the ability to research or do any of this stuff. But everybody was sort of saying, well, that's a beautiful thing. What the court said was that the guy is still, without a shadow of a doubt, a danger to kids. And for that reason, they're going to keep him locked up. And you want to go, yes, that's what I'm talking about, right? That is what I'm talking about. That's what we want to see happen. The trouble becomes what happens when they say, all right, we're going for this dude. He has sold drugs 4 times. There's no chance this guy's not going to go out. We have determined that he is a threat to society for selling drugs, and we're going to keep him in prison. This guy here, he did burglaries, and he burgled 4 buildings, but we have a feeling he's definitely going to go back and burgle some more. So we're going to keep him in it. It's a very slippery slope. And while it's fantastic when it's being applied to the scum of the earth and the worst of the worst, but the problem is it's never going to be contained there. And we find ourselves in another one of those kind of Faustian deals almost with Harvey Weinstein. Because the whole world would be really stoked if Harvey Weinstein got what he got coming, right? Because everybody in the world knows without a shadow of a doubt that this guy was banging the hell out of every single actress in Hollywood on his little casting couch, right? We do all know that, right? They had 2 witnesses against Harvey. When it all boiled down from the 103 or whatever, when it all boiled down, they got down to 2. And I will encourage you, because I'm not going to sit and make a case for Harvey Weinstein. And I'll tell you what, you could watch Candace Owens make a decent case for him. But just go read the transcripts, because even what she does, she's not going to let you read. I mean, she's not going to sit and read all of them to you. But go and take her a look-see at the transcripts and just read what the testimony of these people were. And tell me if it rings true to you. And if it does, I'm not mad at you. But it sure as hell doesn't to me. And if the guy is as guilty as we say is for everything, then it shouldn't be a real problem to catch him, especially because, statistically speaking, sexual predators remain sexual predators, right? You don't These are people that are prolific as hell. And it sure as hell sounded like he was. But when you read the testimony of the people that the accusers that actually made it to court, he was accused of rape. Now, he might have been a scumbag. He might have, but the correspondence back and forth was more friendly than I was with the people that I had been married to. Ridiculously so. And very often initiated by the woman and not not Weinstein. In fact, saying things like, hey, I'm going to be in town. How about having dinner with me and my mom? I don't think you'd do that with somebody that raped you. Harvey didn't call him and say, hey, I want to eat dinner with you and your mother while you're in town. This woman called and said, hey, I'm going to be in town. Can we hook up? And, I'd love to have dinner with you. My mom's in town. Great, bring her. Right? The three of us will go out to dinner. That to me seems bizarre. Maybe it doesn't to you. Maybe it does not to you. But keep reading and get back to me. But it's like people come in and they catch 45 seconds of something I'm saying, right? They literally come in and catch about 45 seconds of what I'm saying, and then they bolt. And they go, oh, yeah, that piece of shit. He's defending Weinstein. Like, how far back has he slid? How about Diddy? How about defending Diddy? Huh? I'm not ready to defend P. Diddy. I promise you. But I'll tell you something. I'm concerned about that case. I'm wicked concerned about that case. And I think everybody else ought to. They ought to be concerned as well. Because this is a shit show of epic proportion. It's so out of control now. And one of the problems is that this platform, right? This Diddy platform that we're on has absolutely no gatekeepers whatsoever. Like if you've not made content before, you kind of assume that there's this all-seeing eye, this body that watches everything that people say. And if they were to lie wholesale, whole cloth, just make something up out of thin air that has nothing to back it up, surely the company that is the town square, right? They're not subject to lawsuits and all of that stuff, because what they say is, hey man, right? This isn't our content. It's just the town square, where a guy used to put a soapbox down and stand up on top of it and yell, right? But in the town square, you don't control where people are allowed to go. You don't write algorithms that take somebody from 5th Street and drive them to the center of that town square. When you start picking winners and losers, right? But anyway, I digress. But this big red button has no gatekeeper, right? So Rick Harrison, who's doing life in prison, or may have died in the courtroom, depends on I guess life in prison is probably the better bet, since that's 2 million views. 2 million views. Now, you're not going to, you might lose credibility as a channel or whatever. You got paid, right? That person could take that down now. They still got paid. There's no gatekeeper whatsoever. And because of that, the stories that have come out have been absolutely incredible. I don't know if you've recently heard, but the tunnels that the people were being smuggled throughout all of LA have been verified, apparently, because Elon Musk has a company, right, called the Boring Company, not as in her, but as in boring. A lot of you are maybe familiar with the concept that this man has a company that drills really large holes underground. His concepts are to try to create a 3-dimensional space in which we can travel. Meaning, right now, we just travel on the roads, but if we could take people and put them under the roads, you could eliminate traffic. People could get on with electric cars and haul the mail. They can even sort of bank the thing and make it so that you could really, really move very, very quickly. That is now the justification for, yes, all of these actors' homes everywhere throughout Hollywood are connected. They all go to this big tunnel. And yes, in fact, there are Starbucks inside them that are serving coffee to the pedophiles and the human traffickers that are kicking it in the tunnel. Make no mistake, there are huge tunnels underneath LA. LA had an attempt at a subway system. For those of a specific age, you may remember that. Whitey Bulger's life ended not at Butner. He died at Hazleton. Pretty sure it was Hazleton. Hey Siri, where did the gangster Whitey Bulger die? What prison? United States Penitentiary, Hazelton. Yeah. Thank you. That would have been the case. And the reason is Butner is kind of a lower custody level. Now, he may have been at Butner at one time because he was getting shipped around to a lot of different protective custody yards. And then, as the conspiracy theory goes, they told him if he didn't come out and take his medicine that they were going to go after his family. At which point, Whitey went to the Bureau of Prisons and said, I don't want to be on PC anymore. You got to take me off of protective custody. And they didn't just take him off protective custody, as the theory goes. They shipped him to Hazelton, which that's the spot. If you were a guy that was doing dirt in South Boston, that part of the country, you got a really good chance of ending up at Hazelton. So Whitey wasn't just in prison. He was around a lot of people that thought, number one, he was a rat, and he was, right? Whitey Bulger had been working with the FBI the entire time that he had been a gangster. I mean, almost the entire time, literally. In fact, the handler, which is what they call an FBI agent who is working, what do they call them? An asset, a CI, and a confidential informant. The FBI agents who handle those are called handlers. I mean, that work with the guys are called handlers. Whitey Bulger's handler got life in prison for how he handled the Whitey Bulger case. True story. I mean, they knew Whitey was killing people, and they were cool with it as long as he was giving them up the Italians, right? Because you had the Irish mob in Boston, and you had the Italians. And if Whitey could turn Italians in, it made the feds look fantastic. They got to get a bunch of medals and stand for cool photos and all of that garbage. And in return, he could go buck wild. He could go out there and sling all the dope he wanted and do all the things he wanted and killed a lot of people. Kind of an unfortunate hang up. All right, so not that we didn't really get off target because, well, there's a reason my cat's name is Squirrel. You're in North Carolina, right near Butner? No way. You're near Butner. Yeah, Donovan. Well done, James Sharp. See that? The handler's name was Donovan. Former FBI agent in prison. Oof. I would not trade places with him, says Kristen Melinda. Yeah. The one thing he probably has going for him is in Black Canyon, which is the nickname for whatever reason for the prison in Phoenix. It's Black Canyon prison. That's an FCI Black Canyon. They have one unit that sits off from all of the other ones. It's got a fence around it so that it's separated from the fellows. We can't go anywhere near that unit. They can't go anywhere near us. And then they put this black material. It's thick as hell. It's like cloth, but you can't see through it. And they put it around all of the fences so that you can't see in. And the one thing you can notice is, especially if you lived in the Navajo building, right? They're not units, they're names. Like it doesn't say Unit 1. It says Navajo North and South. So I was in Navajo, and if you looked out the window, you could see into the guy's cells, right? Because it's the same layout as the unit you're in. But in their cells, you would see television sets because in what they call the cheese factory, and that's where people like former FBI agents go or former prison guards. If you're a prison guard and you get busted and sent to the joint, they got to send you somewhere where you didn't piss off a lot of guys, right? Because there's a really good chance that they're gonna smoke you. You know what I mean? Not a great situation. So. Sonny says, me too, the ADD. Yeah, I've been known to chase my tail. So if we can get back to this Kennedy thing. So right now, sadly, it really starts to appear that in 1963, we sold out as a country, right? We massively lost our way. And to hear Ben Shapiro say, that was 1963. Right. It's 2025. Again, if we were talking about Adolf Eichmann, he would have had a very different, right? That 1946. It's even longer ago. But you wouldn't want any of those people walking around. Why? Because what they did is absolutely abhorrent, right? And you got to take care of that kind of crap. Well, if you killed the United States president because he didn't line up with your political views, that's really jacked up. And whether that happened in 1963, 53, 43, I mean, the only argument that I could see that presents any logic from Mr. Shapiro's point. Well, if it's over, right? But is it over? Is it? Or was Jeffrey Epstein just part of this entire process that's been going on since 1963? A process by where agents, assets from the Mossad, right, help Jeffrey Epstein set up an island where he can bring people, politicians, business people, the ultra elite, the super wealthy, where they could bring them down and give them the opportunity to bang some kids while they film it, to do some things that are so reprehensible in the eyes of society that if you could get somebody on film doing it, then you literally own them. And when I say own them, I mean own them. That's why, you get to a place where you need something passed, you need a bill pushed through. How many times as a country have we found ourselves saying, how the hell did this just happen? Right? The ruling on Obamacare was interesting, right? The entire world had that one pegged, right? Especially when the very conservative Judge Roberts had just been put in there. And for him to come out and go, oh, wait, now it's a tax. No, we're going to be able to do it. And I don't care about the policy of it. Forget all that. But the shock that the whole world just went, why the hell would he do that? I don't know. Who knows, right? Who knows? A lot of times politicians do things that make so little sense that you sit back and go, I wonder what they got a video of him doing. Right? I wonder what they got a video of him doing. You got any idea the power you can wield if you were to set up an operation like that? And how do you do that with absolutely no money? Well, we talked about this the other day. And maybe you get Les Wexner to get the cash to take over Southern Transport, right? That airline that used to fly all of the blow up to the United States and all of the guns back down to the Nicaraguan Contras. Remember that? The Ollie North Iran-Contra affair? Well, those planes end up in China. And allegedly, they end up flying shit piles of SKS assault rifles. That's your Chinese-made AK-47s, right? Those Chinese AK-47s end up on the streets of the United States right at the same time that they passed it was during the Clinton administration, they passed the assault weapons ban. So you pass a ban on assault weapons, large capacity magazines, anything like the AKs, the ARs, and then you flood the streets with them. Now, you've all heard conspiracy theories about how everything that's been going on is just a pipeline to put people in prison, right? Well, during the Clinton administration, they built over 200 new prisons, right? 213, I think was the number. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I believe it was 213. It was a crap pile. And everything became a federal offense. Prior to that, the laws were completely different, but they passed that crime bill, and holy hell, they started incarcerating people, buckets of them. And then the crack stuff started coming in at the 10-to-1 or 20-to-1 exchange. White guy gets caught with an ounce of blow, he gets charged with 28 grams. A black guy gets caught with an ounce of crack. More than likely, that's how it was back then. If it was a white guy, he probably had powder. If it was a black guy, he probably had crack. And they were punishing it 10-to-1, if not 20-to-1. So you got 28 grams, he's got 28 grams, but they charge him with 280 or double that. And now the guy's in the feds for a really, really long time. And you know what? They had to bite the bullet and say, yeah, we screwed that up. And why do you think they screwed that up? Yeah, maybe they were just pure racist. Or maybe it's just that while they're writing the bill at 3 o'clock in the morning, they're, taking a little sniff off of a bullet. Because that's not dangerous stuff. Nobody's killing their grandmother over a $10 bag of cocaine, but they sure as hell were over a $10 bag of crack, or at least that was the story, right? But if you believe all of this, where did crack come from? Did this magically appear? And you could say, come on, Tommy, people were freebasing back in the 50s, right? Yeah, and people were. But the crack concept, the baking soda, right? People were taking coke back to its base form using different chemicals and then trying to smoke the stuff. But using baking soda to put air into the mix as you cook it and make that very hard and very easy to burn product, right? Makes that cracking and snapping sound that where it got its name from. all of a sudden the drug was no longer something you needed $100 bill and 200 a gram or 150 a gram or whatever to buy. And it changed everything. But CIA, that was a gift from the Central Intelligence Agency, allegedly, through a guy named Freeway Ricky Ross, right? The good old US of A, channeling all kinds of yayo, right, to a black dude and letting him go buck wild selling this stuff. The nickname Freeway allegedly came from the fact that he spent almost all of his time on the freeway, driving from house to house to pick up money. The stories of Freeway Ricky Ross are legendary. The rapper who used to call himself Ricky Ross or whatever, and then he changed it to Rick Ross, former prison guard. While the real Ricky Ross was a guy that sold more crack than anybody on planet Earth, or at least up there in the running, with a little help from that 3-letter agency, right? The good old Central Intelligence Agency. There's a great documentary. I believe it's called The Great White Hope, I believe is what they called it. And if you watch that, you'll see them having a hearing where they're talking about crack in LA and this and that. And a gentleman who worked for the United States of America stood up and outed himself in front of everybody in the room and said, I worked for the CIA and we supplied the cocaine to Ricky Ross. You should watch the documentary. It's a trip. And then every time you see him interviewed from that point on, he's always standing on the balcony of something with a view behind him of the ocean where there is no chance on God's green earth that somebody's going to be able to get a bead on where on the planet this guy is. You don't want to fart around, right? In this day and age, you take a picture and there's a tree and a lake and whatever, trust and believe, right? The Men in Black. Can find you and find you quickly. Yeah. Got to agree. I don't mind being my age. Just don't want to ever act it. Boy, I can completely concur with that, folks. I completely concur with that. So, back to the Israeli thing. The problem with 1963 and the possibility that the Mossad had a hand in this, and then once again having a hand in killing the second Kennedy, right? Very well. Who knows? But I promise you we don't. I promise you. But what I can tell you, folks, is this. He did some things that really opened a person up for getting killed. In fact, Muammar Gaddafi made a speech about getting rid of rented currency, right? Like we do in the good old US of A, where we rent our dollars from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is not a United States company, right? You can look this up. We rent our money, which is silly as all shit if you think about it. Kennedy, toward the end of his life, was saying he didn't think we should do that anymore. So was Muammar Gaddafi. He had an opportunity to make a speech at the United Nations. It's the only time he ever got a shot at doing that. Why? Well, because he used to be a terrorist, right? And back in the 80s, he was tied to a flight that a terrorist blew up over Lockerbie, Scotland. And I believe it was flight, might have been, I'm not going to misquote it, but that flight was over Lockerbie, Scotland. And on that, we lost kids from the United States who were on some kind of a field trip. And it was really big in the news. It was heartbreaking. I can remember the pictures like it was yesterday, and you could see the front, the white, like nose cone part of the fuselage of the plane. Everything else was gone. He was a terrorist. He absolutely was a terrorist. That's right, Joan. Wait. I work for my money and the federal government owns it. Yeah. The federal government doesn't own it. Some company owns it and we just rent it from them. Right? We give them money to allow us to use their money, which, by the way, isn't backed up anywhere by anything. Muammar Gaddafi was a terrorist, absolutely correct, and he blew up that flight over Lockerbie, Scotland. And President Reagan got really pissed. And the longest bombing mission that had ever happened on the history of the planet that they could document took place, where they had to refuel a couple of times on the way there and then on the way back as well. But they bombed his tent. And this is not the kind of tent that, Boy Scouts sleep in. This is a tent. This is a big mammoth kind of a setup. And he was not home, but it killed his wife and I believe one of his kids. And afterwards, Flight 103. That's right. It was Pan Am Flight 103. Thank you very much, Krista Melinda. Heart-wrenching. It was really, really ugly stuff. But Reagan bombed his tent and killed his family. And he said in a press conference afterwards that he was very sorry about that. It's not what he wanted to happen. Of course, a lot of kids died on that Lockerbie, Scotland flight, right? Flight 103. So he said, and we're going to keep bombing you until we get you. If you don't, give up your nukes and become an upstanding member of the world community, basically. And he did. He gave up his nukes. And we promised him if he gave up his nukes that we were going to protect him, right? If you give up your nuclear weapons, the United States will not let something bad happen to you. We will always cover your back, right? Which is probably something you should do if you tell somebody that you now have to give up the ultimate weapon, the one that protects you and is the deterrent from anybody else around you screwing with you because they know that you can nuke them back. Now you have to have big brother, right, country, superpower to say, we got your back if these people come at you. Well, he went and got a chance to make a speech at the UN. You say, Tommy, how was it that he was able to make a speech at the UN? Did something change? Well, I'm going to do a show on Benghazi, and I will explain to you what changed. But to just give you an idea, right, because it's going to require an entire show on the Benghazi thing. But when he did get the opportunity to speak to the UN, he made some comments about how he thought it would make a lot more sense if they stopped renting their money from who? Same people that rents us our money. He thought this would be a novel concept. We would do something that was actually backed by something of value, right? There's a difference between a currency that is backed by something and a currency that is not, or what they call a fiat currency. It's a representation of something. What makes a $100 bill worth $100? Is there somewhere $100 worth of gold or $100 worth of silver or $100 worth of wheat or oil? Because see, what he said was, how about, I think, were they spending dinar? I can't remember what they spend, but let's say it's dinar just to make it easy. Every dinar will be backed by 1 dinar's worth of sweet crude that we will keep in a reserve. And our money will be backed by oil. So it will actually have value and you will know what it is worth. And it's not worthless paper. And he suggested that the good old US of A, well, with all the wheat you guys grow, you could call it the wheat buck. And you could start spending wheat money. Right? Not a bad idea. However, you can't say things like that and not wind up in a refrigerator in a 7-Eleven, deader than Caesar, within what? A couple of days, maybe a week? The Arab Spring decided to take him out. His people wanted him gone. Why did his people want him gone? Was he massively hated by the people? Right? Or did he piss off the wrong group? And were there people out there that just said, you know what? No, you're not going to start making your own money. Neither is the United States. In fact, you start bringing up the subject of no longer renting your money from that group of people, bad things happen. The question becomes, what happens when your best friend isn't your best friend? What happens when your best friend is blackmailing you into doing the things that you're doing? And worse than that, if you could get worse than that, what's worse than shooting the president of the United States of America? Huh? What could possibly be worse than shooting the United States president? I don't know. How about taking tweeners, right? Girls between the ages of what, like 12 to 16, and kidnapping them and bringing them to an island to allow them to be systematically molested, raped, and probably killed in a lot of instances, solely for the purpose of gathering intel so that you can dominate your alleged number one ally on the globe. That's sleazier than shooting a president. And I would say to Mr. Shapiro, that's why what happened in 1963 is a big mother-loving deal, right? That's why what happened in 1963 is a big mother-loving deal, because there's a lot of people out here, myself included, who believe that we have been sold lock, stock, and barrel since 1963. Maybe before, but sure as crap since. Have you ever asked yourself why it is that presidents say, I'm going to withdraw all the troops from Afghanistan. I am going to cut taxes on the middle class by 12%, 15%, whatever the case may be. I am going to do X, Y, and Z. Then they get into the office and they go, oh, we're not going to do any of that. But I'm going to drive this one thing home, and this is kind of going to be my platform. Like, I'm going to be known for being the president that did this, right? Maybe Obamacare. It's kind of a big deal. And he's definitely kind of known for that. But he made a lot of promises. One was getting all the troops out of Afghanistan. I have a feeling you get into your office and somebody comes in and goes, hey, you're not going to do any of those things. And let me tell you how it really works around here. It's just an opinion, folks. And you know what it's based on? Absolutely nothing other than the fact that it's a rare thing to see somebody do what they say they're going to do once they take office. So much so that it makes you scratch your head, in my humble opinion. Hold on one second, folks. Hold on one second. Sorry. I have been struggling with something that I can say most closely resembles COVID-19. Body aches, absolutely no energy whatsoever. I just feel like I've had the crap kicked out of me, and it's been going on for days. And to be really honest, I've been having that heart thing again. And I'm weighing in at 201 pounds. And I probably need to get down to about 190 pounds, maybe even 185, so that my body isn't working quite as hard, or my heart isn't working quite as hard for my great big fat body. I did say COVID-19, Kristen Melinda. Can you imagine? Can you imagine for all the times that I have come up with so many different stupid ways to say that, to duck the censors, you say, because you can't talk about COVID, right? And God forbid you talk about whether or not, it was just some Chinese people that don't really know how to clean their food before they put it in the market, or maybe Fauci, who had a huge deal to work out of that lab, was working on shit that he couldn't work on within the United States of America, and it jumped the curb, probably because they decided to let it jump the curb. Boy, oh boy, is it liberating to not give a rat's you-know-what about the censors. Plandemic. COVID-19 plandemic. You hear that? Saguaro Christmas says, I have come to agree with this over the last 3 months of congressional hearings. It's absolutely heartbreaking. We got hijacked. Everything that you have been told since they stopped running Schoolhouse Rock was bullshit. Honest to God. It was probably bullshit then too, but we lived in this beautiful little bubble where we didn't know about it, right? It was the blue pill days of believing that your country would never, ever screw somebody over. Believing that people don't get convicted of stuff that they didn't do. Now we got studies coming out that say that the people in prison, as many as 6%, might be in there for shit that they didn't commit. And when I first heard those statistics, I thought, God, man. So you just got overzealous prosecutors and you got public defenders who suck. And that's how these people, no way in hell. That's not how that happens. No. No. That's 6%. Those are people that live in crooked ass states where they decided to put that person in prison and nothing was going to stop that from happening. And look, I'm not here telling you I didn't rob banks and I didn't run guns. I went to prison for stuff I was guilty of. It's all good. Right? I'm not complaining. But the system sucks. I wasn't defending Harvey Weinstein. But for the love of God, if the guy's accused of rape, find somebody that he raped to go in and testify, because they didn't. Right? And I fear that the Diddy case is so friggin' out of control. It's incredible. Sadly, We've gotten to the point where you're not going to get somebody's attention, right, in the Diddyverse unless there are some animals involved. There's got to be some tunnels involved. There's got to be some ritualistic sacrifice going on. And I'm not being funny. I'm not trying to get any kind of a laugh, but you're not going to get any attention anymore. There's nothing that anybody, it's just another yawner, right? Because we've become so desensitized. Now, is that a plan? Is that something that they did intentionally? I don't know, but it sure as hell has had an effect. The stuff that is coming out today, stuff that's come out in the last week, had we heard that a year ago, you would have recoiled. You want to clutching pearls? You would have pulled them off your neck, right? You'd have pulled those things directly off your neck. Now, you're not getting anybody's attention. Right? You're not. And that environment, right? We talked the other day about the McMartin Daycare Center, right? The McMartin Daycare Center, where the son of the woman that ran the place was accused of sexually assaulting a kid. He went to trial for it twice, both times with a hung jury. And I'll tell you something, it's kind of a miracle that he was able to get 2 hung juries, because the feeding effing frenzy that was taking place at that time, he wasn't just accused of being a freak child molester. He was accused of sacrifice, right? The kids had come in to tell stories of the fact that this guy had cut up babies in front of them. Of course, it never happened. There weren't any missing babies. There weren't any parents that reported any of that stuff. Everything ended up being debunked, right? Everything ended up being completely 100% debunked. And I'm sure the state went running down there as fast as they could to make everything right with the McMartins, right? I'm sure they smoothed that right over. They wrote letters to every single parent. Here are some questions you need to ask your kid. And the questions were things like, were you ever touched inappropriately in the kitchen, or were you ever touched inappropriately in the bathroom? Right? They were written so poorly that it wasn't, just a nightmare. And it spread across the country, right? People were seeing satanic ritual and satanic abuse behind every door. I'm not telling you that satanic ritual abuse doesn't happen. I'm not. We live in a sick effing world, and I believe that there are people out there doing things like that. But I think that we're out of control right now. We're out of control because this story has touched the hearts of so many people, and there are so many people reporting on it. It has become a very, very lucrative business for people that know how to tell a good story. So you'll see thumbnails about how he collapsed in court. Saw a good one about how his son stood up in court, right? And said, "You ruined this family, Dad." It's a great story. It never happened, right? It didn't happen. Not in any freaking way. I had to go and pull the transcripts and read the stuff. It didn't happen. Sounds good. It's what you would hope that the kid might say to his dad. Right? Boy, you screwed this family up. Boy, are you crapping on the memory of our mother. It's just ugly, man. It's just ugly. Anything can be said. The Duke lacrosse team is another one of my favorite stories. I used to do shows and talk to people and say, do you guys know what happened to the Duke lacrosse guys, right? Fill that in for me. Fill in the blanks. By now, most people have heard me do that 100 times. It's not much worth doing it. But when I first started doing it, the number of people who went, oh, yeah, those guys went to prison. Those rapists, right? They were lacrosse guys. They raped a black chick at a fraternity. They went to prison for that. That girl murdered somebody with a knife. And once she knew she wasn't getting out of prison anyway, then there wasn't really any point to keep bullshitting because she's not getting paid or any other such. She admitted that none of that ever happened. But they don't print the retraction on the first page of the paper. Feel me? They don't ever print the retraction on the first page of the newspaper. They print the story that says, this person's a rapist. the story that says, hey, that got looked at by the federal government and they said that's complete bullshit. Case has been thrown out. On the 39th page of the paper in the bottom left-hand corner, there'll be a little retraction about this big. Hey, sorry, we screwed that up. Back to sports. I'm not defending Harvey Weinstein, nor am I defending P. Diddy. But our legal system has been completely hijacked. Our legal system is absolutely crooked to its core. Pick a trial, right? And start watching it. I guess the exception, I shouldn't say pick a trial. There are still some but God, you see so much, like your Karen Reed trial. You're going to tell me that judge is not completely 100% in the tank for the prosecution? I mean, good God, it's embarrassing. It's cringy, right? You know, I object. They're reading from a document that is admitted as evidence, right? And I could go off on a tear. But look at the Karen Reed case. Look at the amount of BS that has taken place. Now, we don't know what happened. We really don't. But I'll tell you something. That the things that, if we believe in coincidences, the one camera between where they were and where they ended up, the one shot that could have shown the back tail piece was from the library. The library had the film, had the camera, handed all of the shit over. It's missing 2 minutes of film, and it's the 2 minutes when Karen was driving by. If that was the only such coincidence, right? But it's not. It's not. Like the stupid turned around friggin' camera at the Sally Port where they towed the car. So you're looking at the car, and they're trying to bullshit the jury and everybody else in the room to think that you're looking at the opposite side of the car. They took the image and just flipped it around. You follow what I'm saying? Now, let's see here. I'm pretty sure. Check this out. Boom. Right? That's what they did. Right there. That was the effect that they went for. You see that? Just kind of changes everything up. But that's a hustle. It's a con. And there were 2 cameras in the room, but one just wasn't working. Right? Or, that one was working, but it failed during these 3 minutes. How many times do we have to watch this shit? How about this is another fine concept? You sit down in an interrogation room and the police come in and they go, hey, we got your best friend next door. And he just said you stole that money and that you killed that woman. He gave up every single thing. He told us all of the details. They can say that to me, even if my friend isn't in the next room. Even if they haven't spoken to him, they can lie to me in any way they want to try to get a confession. If they can document that I'm lying to them, I can be charged. Does that seem right? Honestly, I mean, with all the technology that we've got, right? Why do we still have to keep bullying people into bullshit and confessions? The Reed technique, right? You put the person in a room, isolate him or her for 2 hours, hour and a half, 3. I've sat in there for 2.5, because they want to starve you for any kind of interaction for so long that when they come in and the first thing they do, they walk in the room and go, oh my God, Tommy, you still got your handcuffs on? Oh, I'm sorry. Who's working today? Smith, what a douchebag. Get this kid's handcuffs off. What's wrong with you guys? Hey, is that better? Yeah. Now this guy's a savior, right? He just came in and he's being nice. He's not busting your balls. You want something to drink? Did they get you anything to drink? Are you hungry? Have they been taking care of you? This is awful. I can't believe he's still in handcuffs. And then, right? What did Confucius? Build a golden bridge for your enemies to retreat on, right? That's what they do in these interrogations in the Reed technique. Like you're in there and you're accused of murder. They go, listen, you killed the girl, right? But we know that. We can prove that. The question is, are you a psychopath killer? Do you get off to this? Because that's going to be the narrative right now. But if it's an accident, right? If she came at you, kicked you in the balls, slapped you in the face, and all you could do was defend yourself, man. And I'll tell you what, if you're an 85 IQ, right? If you're somebody that's not blessed, if you're somebody that isn't really kind of quick on the uptake, there are guys in there that go, I don't want to be thought of as a psycho, man. That's not what, yeah, no, it was self-defense, right? And they lead them right down this path because if the guy says, yeah, it was self-defense, it doesn't make a freaking bit of difference. It doesn't. Because they're not going to let that story stick. They're just using that to get the guy to confess. Then they're going to go to the evidence and go, wait a second. If it was self-defense, why then this, and this? These are professionals who are designed to go in there and shred you and take you apart. And the number of people who confess to crimes that they didn't do, people go, how would anybody confess to a crime they didn't do? All the time. All the time. They've been keeping the people in the room for 12 hours, 14 hours. I had a cellmate when it was in Nevada, waiting for the bank robbery stuff. There was a guy that went to Ely prison he got a life sentence. He had killed a veteran over a very small amount of money and some meth. He beat this dude to death. Former Green Beret. It was a terrible story. Honestly, it was an absolutely horrific story. Hold on one second. But anyway, they get this guy in the interrogation room. And I mean, he did it, right? The guy absolutely definitely did it. But he confessed, I shit you not, at the 19th hour. You held somebody in a room and talked to him for 19 freaking hours? Now, you go, there's no way that would ever happen, Tommy. Thing is, this guy goes and rips this dude off, right? So he's cranked up. This guy's done enough meth. If they had let him talk for 2 more days, he would have. But the people that were in there interviewing him couldn't stick around for any more time. And honestly, he got to the end and he confessed. And then he's probably still doing it. He's spending the rest of his life trying to take back that moment. And was it right? They knew the guy was jacked. They knew he was methed out. Now look, the means justify the ends, don't they? He was guilty. Now he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. Then it's okay, right? Everything worked out. It's all good, right? Harvey Weinstein, maybe he didn't rape these 2 chicks, but how many people has he put on a couch? It all worked out, right? If that mindset works for you, then you're in a bad place. You really are, right? That's the start. That's the fabric that begins to start spinning the hell out. And the next thing you know, you could be next in line. I promise. They start convicting people on evidence. Right? If it's just okay to be a bad enough human being, if you're a bad enough guy or you're a bad enough gal, then we should be able to just, maybe throw a bloody glove down. Right? We know he killed her. Right? Make the evidence a little stronger. Throw it on a bloody glove. Furman. I don't know. Maybe you think I'm a nut. I wasn't defending Harvey Weinstein, but the system is broken. Right? The system's broken. It's abused. People use it to throw men away. Right? Throw them away. You want to talk about a place to hide somebody? Huh? You want to talk about a place to hide somebody? If arrested, the only word you should say is lawyer. Nothing else until you have one. Just Joan. This is the advice I give people. If you're guilty, you need a lawyer, right? But if you're not guilty, you really need a lawyer, right? You really need a lawyer because cops want to clear the case. I'm sorry. And I'm not saying there aren't great cops, but they want to clear the case. There's a lot of pressure for that, especially if the case is something that's, a big deal. But I've told the story a bunch of times where we had an employee who said, hey, can you go get stuff out of my house? I'm about to get evicted. I went down, boxed all the stuff up, and I put a note on the door that said, hey, I got your stuff. Call me when you want to pick it up. At my house was a box with all of her crap in it. And the box said on the top of it, labeled with her name and everything else. I left a note at the scene saying I had the stuff. She called the cops and said I robbed her. It was a setup. She was trying to get me arrested because I fired her boyfriend, which whatever. But when I went to court with my first wife and Johnny, because the 3 of us all got arrested for doing it. And the funny thing is, what was inside the box? Her baby blanket from when she was a little girl, some stuffed animal stuff, nothing of any value. It was all sentimental value, some photo albums. Anyway, to make a long story short, I get to court and they said, if you plead guilty right now to this, right, then you're not going to have to do any time on it, but there's going to be I said, I'm not pleading guilty to anything, right? I went down there because she asked me to do it. What thief leaves, I plead guilty when I'm guilty. I'm not pleading guilty to this, man. It's just that simple. I'm not pleading guilty to it. And they come back and they go, all right, it was like a car dealership. Tell you what, my boss threw in the undercoating. He doesn't normally do this. Right? The guy comes back and he goes, all right, here's the deal. I got a wicked good deal for you. You plead guilty right now to trespassing. I said, I wasn't trespassing. The person asked me to go there. That's not trespassing. They came back 3 different times, right? And the first one was going to get me 90 days in jail and a fine of like $1,000 or something, right? When they come back the last time and I go, I'm not taking anything, they go, all right, they decided that they're not going to proceed forward with this. You guys can all go home. You filthy piece of shit. You know what, sucker? Are you kidding me? So this could all have been thrown out from Jump Street, but you were going to try to see if you couldn't get me for 90 days. I didn't do a damn thing. There was no evidence against me, whatever. That's the system. How does somebody who's a prosecuting attorney become a district attorney? Huh? You get a really high conviction rate and you put a shitload of guys in prison. That's what it comes to. What's your conviction rate? That's all they care about. What is your conviction rate? Now, that doesn't mean going to court like Perry friggin' Mason, because most prosecutors, they're probably taking 99 out of 100 of them in plea bargains, right? Because we're also friggin' terrified of a system that's going to throw you in there and literally get you lost. You take deals. You take deals because they design it so perfectly. You go to county jail and it's torture. They put you in a room, right? The lights don't turn off 24/7. You got humming big ass lights on the wall. If you're on the top bunk, it's at eye level. It's horrific, right? 24/7. The lights don't turn off. The food is the worst on earth. Literally, they give you cabbage at 3 meals a day. Right? Really, really rough. And guys plead because they know that prison, you're going to be able to walk around and go outside. Oh, and the other thing is you're locked down 23 hours a day. And guys plead guilty to get the hell out of there and go to prison, right? Where they can, walk around, shoot a little pool, right? Go out to the yard, whatever. It's a life. And they design county jails to get you to plead, right? And I don't think it's ethical to use the confession of someone high on meth, not without other evidence. People say all kinds of things when they're on meth. Well, and you know what? Here's the problem with that, Kristen Melinda, because you're absolutely right. You can't convict somebody based on that. You have to have other evidence. But if you're spagacked out of your mind and you say, I did this, this, and this, and that confession leads them to the other evidence that is going to put you in prison, was that ethical? Means justify the ends, don't they? Right? He's a bad dude. He killed somebody. Do you care how we get him? Well, the problem becomes that at some point, it isn't going to be a murder. And at some point, you're cheating somebody in the system, right? You're cheating somebody. And once you allow that to happen, you become like the guy that everybody has seen on YouTube. It was one of the biggest stories of last year. He's a cop that throws dope in people's cars. He got sentenced. He went to prison for it. But somebody caught him on a car cam throwing down a bag of dope. Now, in his head, these were junkies. He had seen these people before. These are dope fiends. He's just getting them off the freaking street. You understand? It starts off with the best of intentions, but then you get to a point where you can really be proactive. Why wait for these people to break the law? You know they're gonna. So you pull them over and you can't find anything in the car, F it. Throw down a lousy little 20 or 40 bag. No big deal, right? Depends on where you're at. There are states where a testable, measurable amount in a bag. In other words, you can get enough in there to put in one of those little kits. Yeah, you're going to prison. State of Nevada, look it up. It's a 1 to 3, meaning you're going to have to do it 12 months. But any testable amount in a baggie, you're effed. Doesn't take much, does it? And go into court and tell the cop that. Go into court and tell the cop, Your Honor, that there was no dope in my car, Your Honor. Somebody threw that down, right? Somebody threw that down, Your Honor. I know when you look at me on paper, I look like the biggest junkie that ever walked the planet. I know I got a conviction for bank robbery. I know I got a conviction for gun. I look bad on paper, but that's not my bag. Sure, it's not, Mr. Scoville. Sure. All right, get him out of here. That's how it works. The system's broken, right? Harvey Weinstein's not a friend of mine, but he's a hell of a symptom of a broken system. 103 people start yelling you're a rapist. and 101 of them turn out to have made up the story wholesale. That's horrific. Means justify the ends, though, don't they, Tommy? He's a bad guy. We know that he was bad to a lot of people. Where do we stop that? How about thought police? How about if we get you before you did the crime, right? That's a better idea. And who's most likely to commit crimes? Honestly, like we know statistics on this. You realize that if you take murdered people, half of them were drunk, right? Half of the people who get murdered were drunk when they were murdered. And more than half of the people who committed the murder are loaded, right? So they're terrible statistics. Alcohol is almost involved in half or more of all of the killings that happen. So why don't we just start arresting these sons of bitches who are always drunk before they start killing people, right? Let's just lock up the alcoholics. The means justify the ends. Think of all the lives we could save. I mean, we're not saving the lives of the people we're locking up, obviously, but I'm not defending Harvey Weinstein. I don't think he's a good dude. But if he's as bad as they say he is, then finding 3 people that can get on the stand and tell you that, and can also mention that he is horribly disfigured below the waist in a lot of ways. One being that he doesn't have any testicles, but there's other things that he's very, very identifiable, right? Nobody would not know. But 101 out of 103 didn't. It's, I'm not defending the dude. And I'm offended that you think I'm defending. Offended to defend it. And that's all I have to say about that. It is broken by design. I agree with you. I agree with you. Don't get involved in anything that could be considered illegal is really good advice, right? It is really, really good advice. There's a pretty amazing story about a nightclub owner in Miami. And he got hemmed up for moving drugs through his nightclub, which you must admit is fairly sleazy. And he obviously lost the clubs, and he went to prison. And afterwards, it came out that it never happened. He wasn't selling anything. A confidential informant who was working directly with the cops and was also being paid by one of the guy's competition just bullshitted the entire story. And it's what they call ghost dope. So here's how you can go to prison without doing anything that's illegal. Right, GC, I get caught and I got an ounce of whatever, an ounce of cocaine, an ounce of methamphetamine. And the cops go, hey, you're in deep shit, right? You got an ounce of this stuff. Where did you get it? I go, I got it from GC. Really? Yeah. How long you been buying from him? I don't know, 4 years, maybe 5. Okay. How much do you buy? I just buy ounces. I never buy more than ounces. Well, how long does an ounce last? A week. You know, sometimes I do 2 a week, but about a week. Okay. Now they're going to multiply an ounce times 52 weeks. That's 1 year, right? Then they're going to do it to 104 and 156 because they're going to say, yeah, he did it for 3 years. That's 156 ounces. Divide that by 16. That's how many pounds he sold. And you're going to go to prison for selling me ghost dope. No one's ever seen the dope. They can't document that the dope exists other than my word who said, GC, been supplying me for a really, really long time. Yep, 3 years, ounce a week, sometimes a little bit more than that. It's called ghost dope. And people go to prison for a really, really long time behind it. You know? There was a guy on that used to do videos with my brother named Big Al. Big Al went away for a long time behind that kind of stuff. And a lot of people do. I did time with people, and you'd say, "What'd you get caught with?" One of the stories I've told on here before was I had a cellmate named Damien, and good dude. He's from Boston, and or just outside Boston. But yeah, his whole case was ghost dope. He drove a guy to a probation office, and the guy, when the probation officer came out to search the car, right? I guess that was part of the deal. And Damien's just sitting like an idiot in the passenger seat, hanging out, you know, and underneath the driver's seat was 4 ounces of meth. And the guy didn't fold at first, but within a couple of days, he said, yeah, I got the quarter pound from Damien. Yeah, how often are you buying a quarter pound from Damien? Once a week, you know, sometimes more. So you're buying a pound a month, right? How long you been doing that? 2 years. There's 24 pounds. 24 pounds is actually a decent sized meth case. And he said, I didn't get caught with A, bag. I'm not pleading guilty. There's no way they can get me for this. They offered him 8 years. He got 27 or something. They might have even offered him 6. I can't remember. The offer was a lot better than the deal he got. I'll tell you what. But that's kind of how it works. All right, peeps. I'm gonna call it a day. Yeah, it has been one of the weirdest couple of days. I can't even begin to tell you, man. I can't. Yeah, they throw out big numbers like that. Kristen and Melinda, they start tossing out those numbers like running back numbers. You know, where you're getting 27 or 34 or 44. Like they start throwing out those big numbers, and it gets pretty damn ugly. Yeah, God bless Damien is right. The one thing Damien really had going for him was a very solid attitude. He was a guy that, well, at least this was a long time ago, but he had a good head on his shoulders. In fact, you know how long ago that was? Yeah, he's probably getting out in the next 8 or 9, right? Which I know sounds like a long time away, but when you started out with 27, it's not. I met Damien in January of 2011. In January of 2011. So it's 14 years ago. Yeah, so he's got to be under a decade left. Don't step on the mome rats. You know what? That is such a good reference, B. Hendricks. Yeah, for real. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves and the mome rats outgrabe. All right, peeps, I'll see you on the next one. Between now and then, reduce a little harm. Good night.